Hi everyone, Tim the Plane Man here, and welcome back to Plane Time Zealot Binary Edition. So when we left you last, we just fired everything up on this active wiring diagram for the binary build, the Zealot build that's going into the SonicModell Binary. And here it is, she's still running. We've got our motors running, we've got our retracts, we've got our steering and our servos, we've got our ailerons control, we've got our LIDAR, we've got our airspeed sensor. I also didn't mention, because it doesn't do anything, we have a GPS here as well, and of course the accelerometer is built into the flight controller. We have a Wi-Fi module, and we have our standard safety switch and buzzer, which is over here, and pretty much not doing anything right now, but that will be activated later. And the other thing that I did want to mention that I haven't included on the model yet is the video transmitter and camera for the for FPV. And although I have put a camera in here just for demonstration purposes, it's not actually live. I will do a separate video that shows connecting up the video transmitter to the Zealot, because it really is kind of impressive and looks good, and maybe I think it deserves a video on it all on its own. So we'll do that separately. So now let's just quickly go through each one of the UARTs here. Now what I have here is I have an I/O port, or input-output port mapping, for the other end of the flight controller. So this is the diagram that basically shows what's going on here. So what I've got is on that first port on the bottom left of the H743, and maybe this is a better diagram that shows it. So this is UART 2, and this is basically from the manual. They recommend using UART 2, and they come with a standard cable that will connect this MAVLink module to UART 2. So love that. No soldering, plug it in and it works. And here we have a ESP32 fairly standard Wi-Fi MAVLink module that comes up as UAVLink, and as you saw in the unboxing, that's printed clearly on the label with the password and username. Won't go into the details of setting that up because there's lots of information online. Once you have those keywords, then you can look it up. There's videos and there's information on the ArduPilot wiki about how to set up Wi-Fi, and that's using that's UART 2. Now what I have here on UART 1, this is probably one of the most important things about this configuration here, and what I have here is a Express LRS Namimno Express LRS version 2.0 receiver wired up. And what again, the wiring is really nice from Qio-Tek. There's a connector, and it's tagged with a little yellow tag that tells you what it is. It's a 4-pin, sorry, that's the wrong, yeah, a 4-pin UART/OSD output wire, and it's got basically these sockets which are made for connecting in you know, the little plugs that the standard breadboard plugs. And I like that idea because I can make sure that, you know, I can experiment and make sure I've got everything connected up correctly. I can disconnect it if I need to and unplug it and plug in a different one without having to do soldering, which I dislike intensely, as you may have heard. And so here we have our Express LRS receiver connected. The main thing that needed to happen, and as you can see on my mission planner here, is to set the serial protocol to 23, and 23 is RC in. The RC baud rate is 57, which is 57,600. So there's and I'll provide the link, there's actually a ArduPilot wiki page for doing this. Now it does say Yaapu FrSky telemetry script for OpenTX, but it's not limited to FrSky or FreeSky. That's they're just the first guys that did it. but now this works great with OpenTX as well. Serial 2 is UART 2, and UART 2 is connected to the Wi-Fi module. The Wi-Fi module is set to Serial Protocol 2, which is MAVLink 2. UART 1 is Serial 1, and Serial 1 is connected to my Express LRS receiver, and the Serial 1 protocol is set to 23, which is RC in. So that tells me there's radio receiver on that UART. The other thing that you need to do to get this to work is to set RC options. So, and this is really critical. RC options needs to be set, as you can see on the screen here, to the value of 288. And 288 means arming check, throttle for 0 input. Well, that's a standard RC option. That was actually the value before I changed it. And then you need to set this check mark for use pass-through for crossfire telemetry, because the Yaapu Express LRS and MAVLink communicate with the Yaapu telemetry module on the receiver using MAVLink 2 by doing pass-through, by doing MAVLink pass-through over crossfire. The crossfire protocol is what the Express LRS receiver uses to communicate with the transmitter, and then MAVLink is doing a pass-through, so sending the MAVLink packets over crossfire through to the transmitter. So that other option needs to be set, and that gives you an RC options value of 288. Some other people seem to have found that they need other things to work to make this work. I definitely didn't. It just works, as far as I've found, by just doing those two things. So, serial, whichever serial port you're using, I'm using port 1, UART 1, serial port 1, connected to the Express LRS receiver, and I need to set serial 1 protocol to RC in, really simple, and then come in here to RC options and set the crossfire pass-through telemetry to on, and Bob's your uncle. You have Yaapu telemetry and it's working. So there's other options that you may need to know about, other information about the Yaapu telemetry.
Return to home.
Okay, there it is. There's my Yaapu telemetry with my flight controller displayed and the heads-up display, and it telling me I'm still armed actually, and all of that kind of thing. Running on the transmitter, that is all happening because of those two options that were set in Mission Planner or Q Ground Control, but set in the flight controller to configure the Express LRS configuration. What I also want to quickly tell you about is two other things, because I think we're just about done. We're just about done with this diagram. I didn't really do anything with GPS, so there's nothing to talk about there. The LIDAR and the airspeed sensor. Now, the airspeed sensor was wonderful and a pleasure to set up. It's a CAN-based airspeed sensor that I got from Qio-Tek, the same company that produces the Zealot H743. And all I did was I connected using the provided wire. There was nothing I needed to do. This wire is fine, just plugged into the airspeed sensor, plugged in the silicon tubes into the pitot tube, and connected that to the CAN port. And I used the CAN port on the I/O pins at the back of the flight controller. There is another CAN port on the side here, but you don't need to use that. And it saves just a little bit of memory if you only use a CAN bus if you need it. There is also a CAN splitter, and I'll get to that in a second, that could be used to put multiple CAN devices off a single port, and because it's a bus-based protocol, that's actually the smart thing to do if it's possible, but you could, if you wanted to, use a second CAN port if you have a second CAN device. I don't have that. I have one CAN device, which is the airspeed sensor connected to the single CAN port running on the side of the flight controller. And you know, I've documented some of this in a blog post that I've started putting together, I think it's probably time I put that online, so I'll do that. By the time you get this video, the blog will be online, and it was actually really very straightforward to set this up. There's again good documentation on the ArduPilot wiki. If you look for CAN bus setup, you will find it, and I'll put the link for that too. But very simply, for each CAN bus port by default is not enabled. I think it's a minor saving of memory. It doesn't save any flash, but it saves a RAM. So in order to turn on the CAN bus, you basically need to enable that port by setting the port driver flag, and it'll be in this case CAN P1 driver, because it's port 1 equals 1. And you need to reboot after you do that, because once you set that, then other parameters appear that won't appear until you turn that on. So you need to set that to 1, then reboot the flight controller, and then you get CAN P1 FD bit rate, and that will default to 1 million bits per second, 1 million baud. It's not a mega baud, because that'd be 1,240 and some extras. So it's a million, but basically a million bits per second, or 100,000 K per second, quite fast, which is quite nice. But that defaults, and you don't need to touch it actually. And so that's nice. So turn it on, the bitrate will default. The next thing you need to do, because we're turning on an airspeed sensor that's running on CAN, is tell the flight controller that you have an airspeed sensor and what type it is. So there's a parameter called ARSPD type. Set that to 8. 8 means CAN bus or DroneCAN, new name for it. And that, and then I would set airspeed use, so use the airspeed sensor in flying the plane to 0 initially until I'm sure that it's working reliably and I'm getting good readings for it, and then I will set it to 1. But that's it. That's really simple. So in order to get that airspeed sensor to working, I really had to do 2 things. CAN P1 driver equals 1, reboot, airspeed type equals 8. Done. The airspeed sensor started working. I didn't have to do anything else. I didn't have to change those other settings. I'm just giving you them for information. Alright. Now, the next thing was the LIDAR. I'm a bit disappointed in the LIDAR. I had ordered a Benewake TF Mini I, which is a CAN bus LIDAR. The first thing is a little disappointing about it is it's huge and very heavy. Not great for a plane this side, but if I could have got it to work, I probably would have figured it out. But I tried plugging it in, and honestly I could not get it to work. I tried enabling the second CAN port and plugging it in there. It just wouldn't recognize that that receiver. I had to solder the cables because the cable it comes with just doesn't fit into any of the standard ports. There's a single plug that has I2C and CAN wires in the same plug, which I don't understand at all. And so, yeah, I just wasn't really happy with it. I tried making a new connector that only surfaced the CAN plugs and plugging it in and making sure I got them right as far as I know. What I couldn't figure out is what the address or the CAN bus agent number that needed to be for that to work, so I just couldn't work it out. So what I've done is I've gone with this. It's still a Benewake LIDAR. It's a TF Mini S, so it's a really tiny little LIDAR, much lighter, much more suitable for this plane. In order to get it work though, again I have this problem with wiring. Now I mean, I guess I can solve it with some soldering, which I don't really want to have to do. But there is a standard connector, I2C connector, and wire that plugs into this port on the side of the flight controller. And here's the part that I love. The Qio-Tek people came up with this CAN I2C splitter. Now it's got the port to plug into the flight controller on one end here, which could plug into a CAN bus or to I2C. In this case I plugged it into I2C. But what they've done here is provided 2 outputs on this splitter, and 2 of them use the new JSTGH style plugs with the little clip that all of the new flight controllers use, and 2 of them use the old-fashioned Molex, I think they are, and guess what? The out-of-the-box plug from Benewake comes with a plug that will connect from the LiDAR to one of those old-fashioned plugs. So all I had to do, unfortunately, I had to switch the wires. And the Benewake LiDARs always seem to need to be switched. I don't know why they don't provide them correctly in the first place, but they do. You have to switch the 2 send-receive wires on the I2C cable and then plug it into this, and again, Bob's your uncle, and it works. Now, in order to get those LiDARs that come from Benewake to work, they all come out of the box configured for a UART. And I'm trying to avoid using UARTs. And so in this case, I'm not too unhappy about using I2C because it's a proper bus-based protocol and it's much faster than a UART. So it's okay, I'm good with it. I would have preferred CAN, but I can use I2C, that's okay. But you need to configure the LiDAR so it's not using UART, but it's using I2C. The way you do that is you plug in a FDDI adapter. You can look this stuff up, and you configure it by commands. The trick with this is when you send the command from your computer to the LiDAR and say use I2C, it shuts off. It stops working. You think, and this is what happened to me, you think you've broken it. Oh my God, what happened? The LiDAR, because when you plug it in, you'll be actually seeing readings coming through on your computer. Wonderful, it's actually working great. Start putting in the commands, enter the command to, the first command is to switch it to I2C mode. The second command is to save configuration. And as soon as you press send on that button to send that configuration setting, bam, your LiDAR just stops working. But that's because that LiDAR configuration doesn't work with the FTDI adapter, but it will work with the I2C on the flight controller. So once you've done that, that means you've actually got it right. Now, plug the LiDAR into an I2C port, correctly wired into the flight controller like I have here, and all of a sudden, you've got LiDAR. And that's what I have here. And as you can see, and I've showed you this before, but let's have another quick look at it because it's fun. Now I've got my LiDAR connected through I2C to the flight controller. Now the last thing that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to mention the OSD because that comes back to the video transmitter and camera that I haven't got to demo here, and I'll do a separate video on that. But there's a port there for the OSD that connects here, and I've even got the wires connected in that I have tested it, and it works, and it's awesome. So I'm looking forward to giving you that video about the built-in OSD on-screen display that comes with the flight controller, which is awesome. But so now I'll put this picture up again that just shows how I've connected everything. Basically, there's the safety switch and buzzer, and there it is there, connected to the correct port. There's the Wi-Fi telemetry going into UART 2 and the receiver going into UART 1. The built-in OSD will connect out to the video transmitter and camera on that standard port provided for it. I2C connects to my LiDAR. CAN connects to my airspeed sensor. There's a GPS port which includes, and here it is. This is the GPS and compass, and that's the standard cable for that. And that's it. That's all we've got connected here. So I have not used, let's just see what I've not used. I have not used my relay 1 to 4 ADC2. I've not used UART 5. I've not used UART 4. So there's at least 2 UARTs that I didn't use. And there is a USB connector that I'm thinking to use, but I'm also thinking to just go with the Wi-Fi partly because I think I don't have enough cable for that, and that kind of frustrates me because I kind of like to put the USB on the outside of the device. But that's everything. There it is. That is the whole diagram there is my active wiring diagram, which, you know, I just have to do just to show that it's all working. And this has been a nice little test. It's actually, I needed the fan, I think, to keep it a little cool. That was warming up a little bit, but actually everything's, oh, that's getting a little hot over there. That's my power module is getting a little warm. The ESCs are cool. Everything else, the Wi-Fi modules are a little warm. It's not too bad. Express LRS, just a touch warm. Everything's great. So, in summary, Zealot H743 flight controller, servos, pan and tilt camera, nose wheel retracts, Wi-Fi, Express LRS, radio transmitter receiver with telemetry, airspeed sensor, LIDAR, and two motors. So I'll call it there. That's the second part of this Christmas in July. Active wiring diagram for the Zealot H743 flight controller, ready to go into the SonicModell Binary. If you like the video, please hit the like button, hit subscribe. It'll be fun to see how this stuff is all now. I'll be taking this diagram, literally taking this diagram apart now and starting to fit everything into the plane. And I'll show you more about how that all comes together. So please like, please subscribe, and Tim the Plane Man, over and out.